So as you may know if you watch the channel, I've played every single Borderlands game in terms of the main series. So that means Borderlands and then 2 and then 3. But there are of course some spin-off games and side projects that I haven't dived into until now, and one of them being the pre-sequel. Now I did see a few people saying I should check it out. It's not a must-play game and I'll get into that, but basically the pre-sequel is pretty much the origin story and the rise of Handsome Jack, who, if you don't know and if you haven't played the other games, is the main antagonist of 2. So honestly, the best way to play the whole series is probably the first game and then this, and then 2 and 3. But I mean, it's fine if you go back and do this one like I did. I mean, in fact, I did 3 and then 2 and then Borderlands and now this one. A very weird order, I know. But to be honest, it doesn't matter an awful lot. I mean, I still understood the story. But yeah, this game basically just goes a lot deeper into the character development of Handsome Jack, and just a bigger understanding and more detail into the rise he had, and just seeing him become more and more evil. Of course, you still see that in 2. I mean, like I said, you don't have to play this game, but for anyone that wants to just have a bit more backstory to this character, I mean, he is a big character in the whole series, if not the biggest, and this game just focuses all on him and his origin story. But of course, for the more casual player, they may not have even heard of this game. But for anyone that loves the story or just wants extra content in Borderlands, this game is the place for that. I would say it is a smaller game because it isn't a core entry. It's around 18 hours in the main story, but I mean in total it's almost 60 if you want to complete everything. But compared to all the other games, it is of course the smallest one. And it's not just the story that's different in this, it actually is the gameplay as well. In terms of the actual gunplay and the mechanics, it is very similar. But the actual game itself all takes place on Pandora's moon. So for the majority of the game, you're pretty much in space. Of course, there are inside bits and different buildings, but for the most part, you'll be using anti-gravity and in this whole space world, which actually looks amazing because this is after 2, so it is set in between 1 and 2, but it actually released in 2014. So that's almost 5 years after the first game and 2 years after the second. And one of the, I guess, complaints I had with the first 2 games, more so the first one, is just how sort of dry and I guess dull the world looked. And I get it because it is all set in this sort of wastelanded area, so it's not going to be, you know, as colourful as let's say 3, because I love that game, and a lot of that is just because of the world it is and how vibrant and colourful it is. Whereas compared to 1 and I guess 2 in a way, it's more of a brown sort of earthy tone, which I'm fine with. I get the comparison, but if I had to choose, I definitely prefer the more brighter colours. And I mean, with this game releasing later down the line, the graphics are going to be better and the world looks amazing. I mean, it is this year 10 years old, but it looks incredible. I mean, the lighting, and although it is just space, there is still a lot of detail put into it. And what I'm saying is that it probably is one of my favourite looking games in the series. But of course, it could go unnoticed by the more casual player because they don't want to play this game. Now, looking into the story a bit further, the whole story is told by Athena, who is one of the main characters that you can actually play as, because there's 4 to choose from, which I will get into. But she is captured by the Vault Hunters, who are from Borderlands 2, meaning now she's working for Handsome Jack. But that was of course in the past when he wasn't as evil and when he was an employee of Hyperion. So Jack hires Athena and the other group of Vault Hunters, including Claptrap, who you can play as well, and together they try and find this vault on Pandora's moon. But in doing so, the military group Lost Legion, they're trying to stop him from taking over, and it basically starts this ongoing battle, which means you travel across space in this world, taking down various enemies just like in any Borderlands game. But in doing so, you also see his character become even more evil, which is the whole main plot. So of course there are some big turning points and events in this game that of course you wouldn't notice if you didn't play it, and definitely shape the character of Handsome Jack. But I won't talk about them to avoid any spoilers. If we go back to the actual playable characters that Jack actually hires, these characters differentiate between their skills and their skill trees. I won't go through every single skill tree because there's a fair few for each one, but I will do a brief description of their main action skill. Now, as I mentioned, Athena, that probably is the best one in terms of the story and the plot, because I guess it is the canon one, as it's who's telling the story. But in terms of the gameplay, I mean, choose whatever you want. I mean, whichever skill stands out to you, what you like using. But yeah, Athena, her main skill is basically a shield that absorbs damage, and then when it does absorb enough, she can throw that shield at enemies. And then Wilhelm the Enforcer, his action skill is basically Wolf and Saint, Saint, and they're the two drones. So Wolf attacks the enemies, and then Saint, the other drone, will heal you and your allies. And then Nisha, her action skill is Showdown, which basically improves your accuracy and your speed at firing, and then you can also aim at enemies. Basically just a massive boost in all your gunplay. And then you can play as Claptrap as the final one. Now it is cool that you can play as Claptrap, but in terms of the action skill, it's a weird one. It's basically randomly generated, like a spinning wheel. It goes through various skills, there's actually quite a few. I won't go through all of them, but one of them is like, you know, better melee attacks. You can dual wield weapons. One of them, it basically gives you this float that makes you bounce. And then others improve your accuracy and almost gives you aimbot. So some good, some aren't that good. So it's a weird one, but again, choose whatever you want. That one definitely does switch up the gameplay because you don't know what you're going to get. But in terms of the gunplay, I mean, I wasn't going to go into too much detail because it's only 2 years after Borderlands 2. So if you've played Borderlands 2, which you probably have, otherwise you wouldn't be watching the video unless you want to play this before going into 2 to get that backstory. But in my Borderlands 2 review, I definitely go into more detail in the gunplay because it is different from, of course, the first game and also 3. But it's great. I mean, it has some of the best gameplay in the series. I would say I prefer 3, but that's because just in terms of the gameplay, I just prefer 3 anyway. But what I'm saying is that in the pre-sequel, it's not going to be that much different because they're basically using the same mechanics, just telling a different story. And if we look at the whole picture, I mean, all the games, the gunplay is very similar. And that is the main reason why I play the games, just because of the gameplay, which is so fun. Of course, it's this giant looter shooter that upgrades your gameplay even more over time. So the more you level up and progress through the story and the world, the stronger your character is, and the gameplay just becomes so much more different compared to when you first start the game and then late game. And that's what I love about this whole series, and I have done a fair few of these games where the gameplay just upgrades over time. And I know I keep going on about it, but it's the same with Warframe, it's the same with Doom. A lot of first-person shooters are like that in terms of these games. But with Borderlands 2, that one in my opinion does have the best story, and it's the same sort of with this one where in the pre-sequel, I think the main reason why you would play this game is because of the story and no other reason. Because if I'm being totally honest, the gameplay is just on par with, I guess, the first game and then a bit of 2. But if you're looking into the gameplay, I mean, why wouldn't you just play 2 and 3? So I think most people watching this video are the ones that just want more detail on the Jack character, which is definitely what you're getting in this game, and probably the main reason why I played the game as well. Nothing to do with the gameplay, otherwise I would have just carried on playing 3, but it just gives you that backstory and that detail which you wouldn't have gotten. But there's not a lot of bad things to say about it because it is so similar, and I just see it as this extra side game that you don't have to play. You won't be missing out an awful lot if you don't, but it's there if you want to, and I definitely recommend it if you love the story of the other games and you just want more of it, or just the games in general because it's just extra content on the series. So it is a shorter review this time because it just is a smaller game, but if you did enjoy this video, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy single player and multiplayer games as well, I actually played this game in multiplayer, and I'm not gonna lie, it did make it a lot more fun. And I think that goes with the whole series, it always is better with other people, even though it's great solo of course. But this was the first Borderlands game where I did play it multiplayer, and I definitely do recommend it. I have many playlists on the channel on various games, so you can subscribe to the channel if you'd like to. If you'd like to support me any further, then you can become a member on the channel at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to various perks. Then tap the join button on the channel. And that was Borderlands the pre-sequel in 2024, and bye bye.